Hi, I'm attorney Amanda Shaffer. Welcome to Notable Approvals. I have another interesting case to talk about today. Before I get to that, a few quick things. First, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're watching. If you find anything that we say here today to be helpful, please hit that share button. Or if you know someone who may find it helpful, please hit that share button so that others can watch as well. So this case is actually a pretty interesting case. It's a rare one, the issue that was involved here. It was about a client who is a native and citizen of Mexico. He first entered the U.S. back in 2003 or 2004, and he came as a J-2 dependent on his dad's J-1 visa. And his dad at first was not subject to that 2-year home residency requirement. And then his dad something changed with what he was doing. I think he was getting a PhD, and they changed the program. And because the program was receiving government funding, he ended up then being subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. If you come as a J-2 dependent and your J-1 is who you're dependent of, has the home residency requirement, you have the home residency requirement too. And what the home residency requirement means is that you cannot become a permanent resident, or you cannot change your status to an H, an L, or a K. So fiance visa, L's are employment-based visas that can lead to a green card, and H's, H-1Bs, those types of things. Unless you go back to your home country, you stay there for 2 consecutive years, and then you'll be free to come back to the U.S. in one of those categories, or as with an immigrant visa. So you can change your status to other non-immigrant statuses in the U.S. without leaving the country or having to stay in your country for 2 years. But again, even if you're just the dependent, you are subject to this requirement. Now, there is something called the J-1 waiver, and there's all different categories of waivers. I've talked about a few of them before. I've talked about an extreme hardship waiver before. I've talked about the no objection waivers. And in this case, we did a no objection waiver. And that's basically where you're asking your home country if they will sign a letter saying, we don't object to waiving the 2-year home residency requirement. And usually they do. Sometimes when it's government funded, they don't, because they want you to come back. But in this case, as the dependent, it was a little trickier because, even if you Google J-1 waiver and then your country, you might find some information. But J-2 waivers are a little different. Now, what happened was this client ended up, before the J-2 expired, he changed status in the U.S. to an F1. And his dad left the country. And he continued in status as an F1, and then he did his OPT when he graduated, and then he changed status to a TN. And TN is the treaty visa that you have to be a citizen of Mexico or Canada. So he's in TN status, and as an F1 and a TN, he's gone back and forth, no problems, which is to be expected, as I said. And then in 2020, he married a U.S. citizen, and she wanted to file for him to get his green card. Now, that's where the issue with the home residency requirement comes in, because he was on a J-2 that was subject, it's called INA Section 212E. He needed to get a no objection waiver. Now, each country is different on what the process is. So one thing that's the same, you have to get the permission from the Department of State. They forward it to USCIS. Another thing that's common, although there are 4 or 5 different types of waivers, only the no objection waiver you can file at the same time that you file your green card application. The other ones, you have to get your waiver approved first, and then you can file for the green card application. So sometimes some countries that we've done it for, the process is right on the U.S. Embassy's website for that country. It's really simple. You know what to do, done. Mexico doesn't make it as easy. We had to find the right contact at the embassy. And then basically this person got in contact with our client, said whatever was needed, which were the basic things that are needed to show your entry, to show the Form I-20, which is the certificate of eligibility for the J-1s. And it once we finally got the contact, things went smoothly and went quick. So once we got the note, once we were able to figure out the process, we started the application process, or I should say J1, the J waiver process. We started the application because you don't want to get too far into the adjustment of status process without having also filed for your no objection waiver, because you're going to get denied. Because sometimes it takes a few weeks and sometimes it takes months. It's all going to depend again on the embassy. It's when you apply, etc. So in this case, we got the waiver, the approval. Of course, after we sent everything off, they send it to USCIS as well. And everything else, like I said, went pretty smoothly. In terms of good faith marriage evidence, we had plenty. They had a joint lease for their apartment and the renewal, joint checking account with a lot of months, with a lot of usage in the account. I always say, don't just open your joint checking account, use your joint checking account. They had greeting cards, invitations sent to them as a couple for weddings, holiday cards, that type of thing. They had a year of joint taxes, and they also had photographs of themselves, their wedding, and with families and friends. So they went to their interview. Actually, it was only about 8 months between filing and the interview. And they called me after last week, and they were like, we think it went well. They didn't really ask us any questions. They didn't really take anything, but the officer seemed to be confused about the whole J-2 thing. And I was like, well, that makes sense. I think you guys had really strong marriage evidence, so I don't think they were really that worried about the marriage. But I think the officer was probably less familiar, or most of the officers are probably less familiar with this, because it's very rare that you have a J-2 seeking a waiver apart from the J-1. Like you'll see J-1 waiver with the dependent sometimes, but the J-2 waiver on his own, and his brother had actually done the same thing years ago. But it is a very rare thing to see. And it's important to know that if you are on a J-2 waiver, even if your parent, you're whoever you're dependent of is no longer in the U.S., even if you've changed your status to certain statuses, you need to make sure you're not going to be subject to that 2-year home residency requirement. Because if you are, you're going to need the waiver. And that is why it's a really good idea to make sure you contact an attorney. And one last thing I'll say about that is on the certificate of I-20, there's a box that says, like, is this person subject to the 2-year home residency requirement? And sometimes they don't check that box, even though they're supposed to check that box. So it's not just based on what's on that sheet. There's like a whole thing that we look through to see. Like, for example, I gave the example of government funding. If there's government funding, then either from the U.S. government or from your home country, then there's a good chance you might be subject, and you want to seek an attorney, possibly an advisory opinion, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you fall out of status. And in this case, the client wanted to maintain his lawful immigration status, and the TN does expire, can be renewed, but obviously it's ideal to not have to wait for that. So happy ending. Like I said, in the end, it was pretty quick. So the client now has a 2-year conditional green card. And in 2 years from when the green card was granted, or within the 90-day period before that, he will be filing a Form I-751 to remove conditions on his residency to get his 10-year green card. And I was going to say one more thing. I guess it wasn't that. Oh, yeah. Nope. Lost it again. Oh, yeah. The last thing I was going to say, not that important. But when my clients call me after, the officer didn't even tell them if the I-130 was approved, the marriage petition. And I told them, I'm like, I have a feeling this is one of those where he just needs to get the supervisor to check off because it's a little something different. because we were worried they're going to be waiting for months and months and months. And fortunately, I was right. The officer, or I assume I was right, but either way, it was less than a week between their interview and the time that we received the approval. So pretty sure it got approved that day. They did say the officer spent like an hour joking around. Hey, that's always a good thing. Whenever officers want to joke around with me, I'm more than happy to joke around back. That means they're not focused on something negative, and that's the important thing. But regardless, I'm really happy for these clients and that they do not have to worry about it anymore. So hopefully they should get their green card in the mail any day now if they haven't already. So that is all today for notable approvals. Don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're watching, and hit that share button if you found this video helpful or know someone who does. We'll be back next time with another interesting case to talk about. Until then, have a great day. Thanks for watching.